Welcome to our latest news update. Today we have some interesting stories to share with you. First up,
Jack Ma, the billionaire co-founder of Alibaba, has resurfaced in Japan as a teacher. Next,
Ukrainian defenders have ousted Russian forces from some positions in Bakhmut. In other news,
a railway track has been blown up in Bryansk Oblast in Russia, causing a train carrying fuel to derail. Moving on.
Middle East Monitor has some updates on the latest developments in the region. Additionally,
a powerhouse U.S. doctor has been slain in Sudan, killed for nothing. Finally,
the Ukrainian ambassador to Ireland has called for a boycott of Jameson whiskey after Russian supply resumed. That's all for now, let's get started. Well, look who's back in the game.
Jack Ma, the billionaire co-founder of Alibaba, has taken up a teaching role in Japan.
This is quite a comeback story, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Barack. And it's interesting to see him take up a teaching position in Japan. I wonder what he'll be teaching.
Perhaps he'll be teaching the physics of disappearing and reappearing, Katie. I could use some lessons in that myself.
I think we all could, Einstein. But on a serious note, it's great to see Jack Ma back in the public eye. He's a brilliant mind and has a lot to offer in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Absolutely, Elon. And it's worth noting that he's joined Tokyo College, which is run by the University of Tokyo. It's a prestigious institution and I'm sure he'll be a valuable addition to their faculty.
It's also interesting to see him focus on sustainable agriculture and food production. It's a critical issue facing our world today and I'm sure he'll have a lot of insights to share.
Yes, and let's not forget that he's also going to be sharing his rich experience and pioneering knowledge on entrepreneurship and corporate management. I wonder if he'll be teaching a course on how to build a multi-billion-dollar company from scratch.
Well, whatever he's teaching, it's great to see him back in action. And it's a positive sign for the tech industry in China, which has faced some challenges in recent years. I think we can all agree that we're excited to see what Jack Ma does next. From teaching e-commerce to fighting for territory, it seems like Jack Ma is taking a crash course in geopolitics. Speaking of territorial disputes, Ukrainian defenders have just given the Russians a lesson in eviction.
Well, looks like the situation in Bakhmut is heating up. It's important to remember that this conflict has been ongoing for quite some time now, and both sides are looking for a breakthrough. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. We need to analyze the facts and see what's really going on here.
Absolutely, Barack. According to this article from J-Post, Ukrainian counterattacks have ousted Russian forces from some positions in Bakhmut. But the situation remains difficult, and both sides are still fighting for control.
Well, Katie, it seems like the Russians are constantly throwing new units into battle, including paratroopers and fighters from the Wagner mercenary group. They must really want to win this one.
Yes, but according to the article, the enemy is unable to take control of the city. That's a good sign for the Ukrainian defenders. And it's also worth noting that Ukraine said its forces had repelled more than 36 enemy attacks on the part of the eastern front line that stretches from Bakhmut to Mariinka.
That's true, Elon. And Kyiv is preparing to mount a widely expected counteroffensive to retake swaths of territory in the east and south that was occupied by Russian forces following the invasion 15 months ago. It's a delicate situation, but we'll be keeping a close eye on it.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just glad I'm not on the front lines. I'll stick to singing and dancing. Thank you very much.
Yes, Katie, it's important to remember that there are real people involved in this conflict. Soldiers on both sides are risking their lives every day. We need to be respectful and impartial in our reporting, and not make light of the situation.
Well said, Albert. But let's not forget that we're all just a bunch of nerds sitting at a table talking about the news. Who knew we'd end up as news anchors, right? Well, it seems like the Ukrainian defenders have been practicing their moves in Bakhmut, because now we have a train carrying fuel that's been derailed in Russia. Looks like someone forgot to tell them it's not a game of red light, green light.
Well, folks, we have some breaking news tonight. A train carrying fuel has derailed in Russia's Bryansk Oblast, which borders Ukraine. This is a serious incident, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
Yes, Barack, this is a developing story, and we're getting new information as we speak. According to reports, an unidentified explosive device detonated at the 136 km point of the Bryansk-Unecha railway line in Uneshki district, causing a freight train locomotive to derail. No one was injured.
Well, Katie, it seems like someone really blew up the tracks on this one. I hope they didn't think they were going to get away with it. As they say, the truth always comes out in the end.
Indeed, Albert. And according to reports from the governor of Bryansk Oblast of Russia, emergency services are currently working at the scene. Traffic on this section of the railway is stopped.
It's important to note that the train was carrying fuel and construction materials, according to the Kremlin-aligned news outlet RIA Novosti, citing the government of Bryansk Oblast. This is a serious incident that could have far-reaching consequences.
Yes, Barak, this is definitely a situation that requires our attention. According to the Belaruski Hagen monitoring project, the railway connection between the Belarusian city of Gomel and Russia has been disrupted. That's a lot of people who are going to be affected by this.
It's a shame that people resort to violence to make their point. We need to find out who is responsible for this and bring them to justice. In this article from Ukrainska Pravda, they reported that an electricity pylon had been blown up in Russia's Leningrad Oblast, and an explosive device had been found on another pylon. This is a pattern that we need to pay attention to.
Well, Albert, it seems like we have a real mystery on our hands. Who knows, maybe it was aliens who blew up the tracks. I mean, I'm just saying, anything is possible.
Well, from a train carrying fuel to the Middle East, I guess we can say things are really heating up.
Let's see what's happening in the Middle East monitor.
Well, folks, it seems like Brazil's President Lula is not happy with the UN's inability to create a Palestinian state. He's calling for a new international mechanism that does things differently. But let's not forget the role of the UN Security Council in all of this. As we know, the permanent members hold a lot of power and influence. But maybe it's time to expand that circle and include more countries in the decision-making process.
I agree, Barak. It's important to have a diverse range of voices at the table. And Lula makes a good point about the winners of the Second World War determining the current makeup of the Security Council. But how do we go about changing that?
Well, Katie, it's not going to be easy. The current members of the Security Council are the United States, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom. They all have their own interests and agendas. But maybe we can start by looking at some of the countries Lula mentioned, like Brazil, Spain, and India. They have large populations and economies, and could bring a fresh perspective to the table.
I like the idea of a G20 of peace. It reminds me of the G20 summit, where leaders from the world's largest economies come together to discuss global issues. But instead of just focusing on economics, we could also talk about peace and security. And maybe we could even invite some non-member states to participate, like Palestine and Israel.
That's a good point, Elon. But let's not forget the complexities of the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's not just a matter of creating a Palestinian state. There are issues of borders, settlements, and security that need to be addressed. And ultimately, it's up to the Israelis and Palestinians to come to a peaceful resolution.
And let's not forget the pro-Israel group, Stand With Us Brazil, who criticized Lula's comments. They pointed out that Israel was not created by the UN, but rather through a war with neighboring Arab countries. It just goes to show how complicated this issue is.
Indeed, Katie. And in this article from Middle East Monitor, we see how Lula's calls for a new international mechanism have been met with criticism. But regardless of the outcome, it's important to keep the conversation going and work towards a peaceful resolution in the Middle East.